Hello, my name is Naeemah Zakarya, and I am a student in the program of the environment. My presentation is Climate Justice, the Role of Human Values in Effective Communication and Inspiring Action. The reason my work is important is because there's not enough emphasis on social justice in the climate change conversation. Social justice is crucial because the people most vulnerable to climate change impacts are the communities of Black and Indigenous people of color and low-income peoples. They are the least responsible for climate change, and they lack the resources to combat these impacts. Climate justice encompasses issues such as proximity to environmental toxins or pollutants and the lack of affordable housing and healthcare. In past studies, altruistic values were tied to participation in the climate movement, and values like conformity were tied to skepticism of climate change. Understanding these values could improve communication and help increase awareness of climate change impacts on these vulnerable communities. I asked the question, can understanding the values of climate justice advocates and non-climate justice advocates lead to effective climate justice communication? To answer this question, I created a survey that measured respondents' climate justice advocacy and their scores for 10 values based on Schwartz's Portrait Values Questionnaire, as well as did some literary research on the relationship between values and the climate change movement. With a total of 103 respondents who answered questions about climate justice, I found that 77 were climate justice advocates and 26 were non-climate justice advocates. In all of the 10 values, you can see in figure 2, the first bar graph, that the two groups shared similar scores. While there were, slight differences between the two groups in the different values, the differences were not significant. The higher values were benevolence, universalism, stimulation, security, and self-direction, with lower scores in hedonism, tradition, conformity, achievement, and power. These higher scores translated to the value clusters shown in figure 3, the second bar graph, and they translate to self-transcendence, which are the values that emphasize concern about welfare and interests of others, which were calculated using universalism and benevolence value scores. And openness to change, which is openness to the change of new ideas, which is calculated using self-direction and stimulation, which is why self-transcendence and openness to change have higher scores than self-enhancement and conservation. So those are my key takeaways from the survey. And from my literary research, I found that while people were, motivated to participate in the climate movement and against climate change impacts for the sake of the environment, they were more so influenced by the resulting social injustices from these climate change impacts. The implications of my work, of this project, are that climate justice is not considered to be the most important issue in the climate movement by non-advocates, and that's the problem that I'm trying to work to solve. The implications of this project, one being climate justice is not considered to be the most important issue in the climate movement by non-advocates. This is the problem that we're seeking to solve. Communication needs to be improved by appealing to people's values like benevolence, universalism, security, and more. Let's do that again. Okay. The implications of my project are that climate justice is not considered to be the most important issue in the climate movement by non-advocates. That was one of the questions that I asked in the survey. Second, communication needs to be improved by appealing to people's values like benevolence, universalism, security, and more. An example of this would be to tell more stories about actual people in these vulnerable communities using local communities would even be better, such as telling a story about families that live in Seattle and are facing multiple different difficulties that are just multiplied by climate change impacts. That would appeal to people's values like benevolence and universalism because they care about, the welfare of people and the environment. And that could perhaps influence them to act against climate injustices and to participate in the climate change or climate justice movement. So that ties into my last fact. Utilizing these values can influence increased action against climate injustices that face these vulnerable communities. Lastly, I'd like to give special thanks to Elise Lasky, my site supervisor at Seattle Shapers, Dr. Russell, my faculty advisor, and my internship partner, Bella Koch, and to all the survey participants for helping me with this project. Thank you so much. Thank you for watching my presentation. Bye.